are bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 63. And it is the day after Memorial Day. So it's Tuesday, May 28th. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you to all the servicemen and women out there that are fighting for our country and that have fought for our country. You know, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be able to do everything and have the freedom we do here. And I just want to say thank you to all you guys. And you guys really are the heroes of our country. And I really appreciate everything that you guys do. And thank you so much. So, on to this week's podcast. Like I said, it's episode 63, and today I'm flying solo again, and I will be for a couple weeks probably, just because, you know, Justin, like I said, he's on his bear tour, and I did get an update from him. He just got done with his first bear hunt, and he was filming a guy that he was with, and they were able to kill, and I can't wait to hear that story. I haven't got much of it, just Cliff Notes version. You know, he's out in the mountains, so I think he's on to the next hunt now. So as he comes through with updates, I will be, updating, or we'll just wait till he gets back and we can get a podcast going. So, but for today's episode, I have Joe Sir on with me today. And if, a lot of you guys don't know who Joe Sir is Iowa native, and if you guys are familiar with anything with outdoor television, he had a television show on the Sportsman Channel called Hallowed Ground Outdoors for about 7 or 8 years. And since then, he's stopped doing the TV show, but he's doing, he's a content creator, and he has his own business called Rizen Media. So what they do is they go out and, they shoot a lot of short films, commercials, brand assets for any, company out there that wants to use their services. So, and he's top notch. I mean, this guy knows his stuff, and he's very good at what he does. So just to break down this week's episode, we dive into the first part of it about, Joe and where he come from and how he got into what he's doing. And it's pretty crazy how he did it, because he didn't have any training in it whatsoever. Never ran a camera, just decided one day to pick up a camera, and now he's at the forefront of our industry. I mean, he's one of the guys, the leaders right now, doing great content creation, and he's just really good at what he does. And for the second half of the show, we get into a story of a deer that he chased for 3 or 4 years, and was able to get him on the ground with a bow and arrow in Iowa, and the deer is a giant. So you guys need to stick around for that story as well. And a couple updates here. For everybody that does follow the podcast, you guys are probably starting to see a new logo pop up. So a couple episodes ago, I said, Justin, I kind of put him on the spot, and I said, I got a surprise for you. Well, maybe it wasn't a surprise for everybody. It was kind of for me and for him, but we're a year into this. So the podcast is a year old now, and I want to thank everybody for the support and everything throughout this first year, and it's been great. Can't wait to see what year 2 has in store for us. But, as we come up on a year, I wanted to rebrand the look and the feel of the podcast. So I felt like the logo needed some updating, and after kicking around a few ideas, we come up with something, and here it is. So on Instagram and YouTube and on the podcast, you're going to see a little different logo, but it's still us. So hope you guys enjoy that. And other than that, happy Memorial Day. I hope everybody had a great weekend and a long weekend and partied their butt off, but was safe about it, hopefully. So kicking off the work week here, I want to kick it over to this interview with me and Joe, so hopefully everybody enjoys it. But before we get into that, lastly, I do want to mention America's Best Bowstrings. We still have the Fall Podcast code going on right now, so type in Fall Podcast at checkout on America's Best website to get $10 off your orders $99 and over. Go in there, check out the Pursuit, the Premium, and the Platinum line. Pick out your colors. If you want speckled, twist, what serving color you want, what shrink wrap color you want. And like I said, at checkout, Type in Fall Podcast for $10 off, orders $99 and over. So with that being said, let's get to the interview. All right, on the phone with me today is a guest that I've been wanting to have for a long time, and his name is Joe Sir. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend in Zach Sutherland, and he kind of made the connection with us. And honestly, from afar, for the longest time, I've been following what you've been doing and really have kind of looked up to you. And you've been somewhat of an inspiration to me as far as, filming and content creating and everything. And it's a really good opportunity for me. And I'm glad I could, get you on here and get the time to do it. And I'm excited about this one.
I am as well, and thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Before we get too far, can you kind of explain, who you are and what you do and where you're located at? Yeah,
so I hate to say this, I'm 36 years old, so I'm getting up there a little bit, I feel. 36 years old, I live in Northeast Iowa right now. I guess that's where I call home. It's my dad's hometown. My grandparents are here. We live on about 10 acres of the home farm, and that's where I do primarily all my whitetail hunting and everything. I've got a wife, been married for quite a while now, and long enough to have 4 kids. I've got a 10, 8, 6, and a 2-year-old right now at home. We got 3 boys and a little girl, and do production full-time, content creation within the hunting industry, which is just an absolute blessing to do something that I love on a daily basis. And living in the country, creating content, hunting deer, and just very, very blessed.
Yeah, for sure. And you've got 4 kids now. I've got 1 daughter, and she's a year and a half, and she's enough for me to handle. So how are you handling 4 kids, doing as much hunting as you do and, doing your job as well? I mean, you're a business owner, so how do you balance that?
Yeah, number one is a good wife, that's for sure.
Yeah.
My wife definitely works a lot harder than I do. Every time I'm on a trip, it means she's stuck at home with 4 rugrats. And when you're sitting around a campfire telling stories, it's usually happy hour at home, and she's fighting kids with baths and putting them to bed and stuff like that. So good wife is definitely number one, but you just got to keep having more, man, because it gets easier. One is a big life changer. I think 2 is not as big of a transition as 1, and then 3, it's like you only have 2 hands, and then 4, the kids are old enough where they can start taking care of the younger ones. So pretty soon we got some built-in babysitters too. So
there you go. Yep.
Yeah, no, it all works out. Kids are good.
Yeah, I really don't really like to be outnumbered, to be honest with it. In my luck, I would have like 2 more girls. So it would be like living in an estrogen ocean over here, I feel like. And it would just come home, and I would open up the door from work, and I would just close it because it would just, things would be, everybody would be doing girl things, and I'd be outnumbered. So I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. I think God says he doesn't give you more than you can handle. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, to jump right into it here, I'm interested in, going back a few years, and I really am interested in how you got into, content creating and filmmaking, and honestly, you had a TV show for a while too, a very successful one that I really enjoyed. Was that something that was a passion from when you were little, or when did that start growing, and is that what you kind of wanted to do? Like when did that happen?
Yeah, good questions. I had doing anything within the hunting industry was not even on my radar in any way, shape, or form until after college, after marriage, when we moved back home to Iowa. I mean, I grew up, sports was my thing. I thought for sure my goal was to play college basketball. I thought I was going to do like personal training and stuff like that. And went to college and switched majors about 4 times and got married while I was in college. And then got married, and my senior year after I finished basketball, because of switching majors, I was going to have to go back to school. And my grandpa sold insurance back here in Northeast Iowa, and I knew that I didn't want to. I just knew that school, my major, stuff like that, I knew I wanted to be back home in Northeast Iowa, and so we kind of, I left school like 8 credits short of graduating, so I moved back to Iowa with my wife and started selling insurance. And I grew up hunting and fishing. Those were 2 huge passions of mine. I was actually homeschooled from 6th grade on, which taught me a couple big things. And the great thing about it was I did school about 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time I was pretty much out in the woods or fishing. So I always used to think, by the time I graduated high school, I'd done more hunting and fishing than a lot of grown men had done in their whole entire life. So I lived it from a very early age, and having a family farm and a grandpa who hunted and a dad who hunted, that was instilled in me at a young age, and I just had an opportunity to just kind of just go wild with it, and that passion grew. But it obviously took a little bit of a standstill. I was in college, especially playing sports and stuff. But once I moved back, it was like, totally immersed back into whitetail hunting. And, that's kind of where it started for me, was just like every kid who wants to, every person who kind of has a yearning to do something that they love. I started to watch outdoor television and started to just kind of, I guess, see in my mind where the things I didn't like about outdoor television. It was kind of a time where everything was about the kill, or at least in my mind, it seemed like everything was about the kill. And I just thought, hunting to me was so much of a process and so much about a story. And I just thought that there was an opportunity to do something a little bit different and tell that story. And it was right about that same time, I think Heartland Bowhunter was just kind of starting, and there were a couple other shows that kind of had that story-driven type content, and that was right where my mind was at. And so, really basically it started like, hey, it would be great to have a TV show and get paid to hunt. And that was the extent of my knowledge, or I guess my ignorance,
Yep.
Probably, if you will. I had never filmed anything. I had never, honestly, I don't even know if I'd taken a still picture before. Definitely never edited anything. The only little bits of artsiness in my veins, I could draw a little bit like in grade school, but that was it. It was basically out of the blue, and it was an idea in my head and a vision for what it should be and a passion for hunting. And then it basically just turned into, I was stealing my parents' handy cam from in the house, and we were running around in the woods and filming random adventures. And that's basically the start of it right there.
So, you took the handy cam, and mom and dad were probably wondering where the heck that was.
Yeah.
And, so you just started in with filming, and, at that time, like you said, kind of being ignorant to it, like even me as well. I'm 32 now, so I'm not too much younger than you are. Mm-hmm. And, the Michael Waddells were kind of what we looked at as well. And it was like, then you hear the story of Michael and how he started with Realtree and turkey calling and then became a cameraman. And it was like, it's like everybody wants to be the next Michael Waddell, where there is so much more to it than just being on TV and getting paid for it, and I think that was because I wanted to do it as well. I filmed my first successful hunt, actually just pushing record and just aiming at a deer when I was 16. And, my teacher in high school let me edit it for my video productions class and put it on the announcements for everybody to see, for all my friends to see and everything. And when I got the reaction from everybody from there, that was kind of like, well, I love hunting. And I was just like you, loved sports. I played 3 sports in high school and went on to play college baseball in college and did that. And, you always have those dreams that you want to be in the pros, you want to do that. But it's like realistically, then I, went to college for the video productions, and that's when I really started taking more initiative to it. And, so it's pretty crazy how you just had this epiphany or this thought, and that's what, you took it from there. And if anybody hasn't seen your work, they really need to, because you are one of the top content creators or producers that, in my eyes, in our industry. And me now knowing your story, getting in there, you've really worked your butt off to get where you're at, and it really shows. I really respect that about you, and that's crazy, because you taught yourself, right? I mean, was there any more teaching? Did you go to any video schools or do anything like that?
No. Actually, so, and man, it feels like it was so long ago, but we actually, started to film, and then started to film, I think maybe one fall, with that little handy cam. And it was like, then everyone, the next talk is like, oh, you're field staff. Oh, you've got sponsors.
Yep.
And, trying to figure out, and this was before like social media too. So things weren't, there was so much, it was tough to find things out. It was tough to contact companies. It was back when, every like media kits were hard copies and, things like that. So things have changed a lot since then. But I knew, like, hey, if we want to have a television show, you have to get sponsors. So I literally, I think my first thing I told my wife, and she was crazy that I was going to do this. I bought an iMac, and I had like their stock program for editing pictures, and we started taking some pictures, and I literally sat in a spare bedroom of our house and shot on a black screen, no clue what I was doing, basically like the story of, like, hey, this is who I am. This is how I believe, outdoor television should be shown. Here's my philosophy on it. Here, here's some of our clips. Everything was done in iMovie. And I basically just started, I went to the print shop in, our small town in Iowa, got media kits printed up. And then I just started contacting companies. And that was literally within a year of starting to film. And then, some companies started to actually like respond to us. And I was just, I was blown away by that. And then it was like we had a couple sponsors, none of which were, financial by any means. But for a kid out of college with no clue what they were doing, when you got a product from someone, you felt like you were on top of the world, at that point. And then it was like, hey, well, let's see what it takes to have a television show. And then that's kind of when reality sunk in, when we got numbers back from the Sportsman's Channel, and it was, for 1 year, it was more than your student debt and stuff like that. And then things got real from a business standpoint real quick. So yeah, I never really edited anything. I had no business training at all, no formal camera training. Honestly, even at that point, YouTube wasn't even something that, it wasn't even like you were looking that up. It was all what kind of the vision that I had in my head, which I think is really important for content creators. Now there's a lot at our fingertips. There's a lot of things that you can learn. A lot of people will, there's so many cameras out there at your disposal. But I think a lot of it just plain comes down to, your ability to tell a story and to hit people in the gut and, for that vision. So I think I think that made just something that God has blessed me with, that helped, get that start and helped kind of, put me on that path, I guess.
For sure. And, one thing you were saying about story, and I've done a couple podcasts with a couple other podcasts out there. They've wanted me to come on and talk about cameras and filming and everything because they were kind of just getting into it. And, a question that I get a lot is, what camera should I get? Or, what should I buy? And it's like, well, I kind of take a step back, to those people, and I say, well, the camera, your story means more right now than the quality of your camera. I mean, you can still have good composition. You can still have, the right shots and everything with a, little handy cam right now and put a story together. And then, nobody's going to turn it down just because the quality is not like, 4K or 6K or,
Right.
so that's where I kind of tell people to start. Don't break the bank, because who knows if you're going to want to do this in a year,
Sure.
or longer. Just go out there and tell the best possible story you can and learn from it. And, in my opinion also is you become a better shooter when you're editing your footage as well, and vice versa. You become a better
Yes.
editor when you shoot, because, a lot of these television shows out here, some of them have editors that don't shoot. And then I'm not saying nobody can push out a good product that way, but I feel like they go hand in hand, and they really need to be a cohesive project, I guess you could say. And
Yep.
that's the first thing I tell everybody. But I mean, do you get that question a lot? Like, how do I get into this, and what should I do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You get that question a lot, asked in different ways. And no, I'm 100% with you. I mean, I think I posted a picture on Instagram a little while back, kind of like a throwback Thursday. I think I probably had one of our first video cameras, and then one of the cameras we shoot with right now for commercial projects is a Red. And I think as a Canon T2i was my first DSLR. And to be completely honest, there's times where I want to throw that Red, in a lake and just pick up the T2i, because there's just something with that simplicity and ability to not miss things that are happening in the moment.
100%.
And sometimes that's a lot more important than an image. And especially now with social media and where your content is being shown, you're exactly right. Like, a lot of times there isn't a ton of difference between the quality of those two, and a lot of it just comes down to your ability to tell a story.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you. Like, still to this day, is my favorite camera is the 5D Mark II.
Sure,
I love that camera, and there's some things obviously I would change about it, and it's very outdated now, but we still have one of them, and it's still a solid camera. But we've been doing a lot of turkey hunting here in the last couple months, and we're running and gunning with A7S2s, and it's like just this morning I was talking to some of our other field producers, and I said, you know what? I just want to throw that thing in the corner and take a PMW 300 and put it on sticks and let's go. Because it's just convenient, and it's like it almost becomes more work when you have, like you were talking with a Red. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing with a Red, it's a little bit of a learning curve there,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
same thing with like FS7 as well. If you haven't really ran them, you need to kind of learn the ins and outs of them. And so I totally agree with you on that. There's days I just want to throw that A7, but then it's like, the low light capabilities in that is, I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable what that camera can do in low light. So it's,
Yeah.
for in the tree, it's really nice because, I mean, we can last longer than a hunter almost, and it's nice. But
Yeah. No, you want gear that is going to allow you to reach your full potential and not limit you. And that, whether that is maybe sometimes a simpler piece of equipment, or when you do have needs like the A7S, A7S2 with those low light capabilities, sometimes that's the tool for the job too.
yeah, for sure. Now, going back a little bit, your TV show was called Hallowed Ground Outdoors, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so where did
Yep.
the idea for Hallowed Ground come from, and what was the train of thought for that?
Yeah, that was just something that kind of idea, that philosophy was just something that I had in my head. I mean, that's what the outdoors are to me. An opportunity. I think if there's, every single person who has an opportunity to enjoy a sunrise or just to be out in God's creation, that to me is hallowed ground. So that's kind of, and anyone who followed the show saw kind of the ways that we tried to intertwine our beliefs in that, and that was just very that was kind of at the core of who we are and what that show was about. So it just kind of seemed like a good fit that was very true to the to who we are and why we love the outdoors. And,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that show.
Thank you.
I was asking Zach the other day because honestly, in the last couple of years, I haven't watched a lot of outdoor television, and honestly, I haven't watched much television at all, just because with my daughter now, I just don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I was asking Zach, I didn't know you guys weren't doing it anymore, and you were just doing the Rizen Media, and I was kind of bummed when he told me you guys weren't doing it, because I like to, because it's usually on my DVR, and when sometimes I go back and look at it, and I'm like, well, it's not there anymore. So
yeah.
But you're just going forward with Rizen Media then? Is that
Yeah. Yep. The show was a huge part of where I am today, and it was just kind of the natural progression of things. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of almost even drawing a blank. We did 7 years with Hallowed Ground, and it just got to a point where thankfully, business was good, production business was good. I never thought that it would turn into doing production stuff. Honestly, when we first started, I was leveraging a lot of our sponsorships, like working with sponsors. And I thought this right from the beginning, is that, sponsors who are putting money into TV, they weren't necessarily getting a lot back for their own marketing purposes. So we kind of built out media kits based on like, hey, if you work with us, we'll also create a commercial for you and provide these type of, assets for you and things you can use for your own marketing. And we started making these commercials and started giving them pictures and started creating trade show loops and things like that. And companies actually started to use them. And then I think our first year we won Best New Series, and I think our second year we were, I don't know if it was just nominated for a couple of years for Best Intro or some different things, but all of a sudden within a few years kind of just developed this portfolio that a production company would have. And then it slowly started to progress into, just doing production work for companies. And then over the course of those 7 years and changes, TV has changed quite a bit. And with the social media, just kind of changing the way that everyone views content and a lot of companies' needs, it just slowly started to take over the need for the show. And it just got to the point where, I couldn't do both of them. I definitely couldn't do both of them well. Looking back, everyone who was on Hallowed Ground, we had some great guys on the team. J.D. Hewitt, he was a huge part of it starting. I definitely couldn't have done the show without him, without those guys. And it just got to the point where, like, man, none of us had kids when we started, and all of a sudden we had 3 kids, and everyone was kind of a weekend warrior. And it just got to the point where we kind of outgrew it, and it was just time to. I think God was just saying it's time to move on, and so definitely enjoyed that time. But now, it's straight up Rizen Media. I mean, honestly, we flirted with the idea because what's cool about what we do right now is I'm still blessed to be able to do a lot of hunting, and probably even more hunting than I was doing with the show. And then we're also able to go out and capture stories of other people's hunts. And there's just on a daily basis, whether it's hunting, management here on the farm, like literally every single day we're creating content, whether it's our own stuff, hunting wise or for clients. And we flirted with the idea of doing some sort of digital Hallowed Ground type series or things like that. But right now things are just too busy, so it's not God's timing yet. But maybe someday we'll bring that back in some way, shape, or form, because there's definitely a lot of content sitting on hard drives that I think people would enjoy.
I can only imagine. We're replacing hard drives every day, it seems like, and archiving them, and it's like, man. Yeah, and so you essentially ended Hallowed Ground, and you kept going with the Rizen Media, and now I can see what Chris and Casey go through with having a production house and having a marketing house, and how many employees we have, and having 2 TV shows of just their own. I can see how much work that you were probably doing, because you were probably helping a lot on the edit side and doing the producing of it. And that's what I've been doing for Chris and Casey for the last 7 years, is editing Rival Wild and producing it. And that's kind of been my baby. And, they don't have time to do that. And they don't, they don't essentially press the buttons either. They're not editors, and they're good producers. They produce in the field with us as well. But I can see where, it probably got to be a lot of work, like you said, with the family and everything, and growing that, and I can totally understand that. But now with Rizen Media, can you explain a little bit more about Rizen Media and what you're doing, and how many employees you have?
Yeah. Yep. I honestly, I should just sit down and define what exactly we are. Sometimes I have a great answer to this, but I mean, we are content creators. We create, whether it's video, whether it's photography. We're starting to get into social media management, and do that for a couple different companies. But I think that, our bread and butter is just creating content that moves people, for other companies' marketing purposes. And then also just internally with our stories. We've got a couple films that are coming out this year, just hunts that I'm on. And right now it's me, and I've got a very talented kid, John Lockwood, who works here as well. So he's a big part of anything good that happens coming out of here. But that's it. It's just us two. And then we'll work with, some close freelancers from time to time, but pretty much, my goal is to keep it small, keep it manageable, create quality versus quantity, and just do good work and tell compelling stories. And we've been blessed with some phenomenal clients. And our main goal is to create content that's going to help those clients move the sales needle. And that's just kind of been our philosophy, and so far it's been working for us, and we're really busy. So that's a good thing as well. Yeah,
for sure. And keep doing what you're doing, because I love watching all your stuff and seeing your posts every day on Instagram and your pictures. It's motivation for me, and it's inspiring too, just to kind of keep my game up and try to keep it going a little more, and it's never good to get in a comfort zone. So it's always to keep going and pushing forward. So that's really cool. We're coming up on a half hour here, and I would like to go for at least another half hour, but I have, for the second half of the show here, Zach told me I needed to bring it up here, and and it could be because he was the one that produced the hunt, but he said we need to get into the G-Thang buck, and talk about all the years that you had history with him, and that's what I love, is the stories about that, and he said it's a heck of a story. So I think he was kind of wanted a shout out in a way.
Okay, all right.
But he told me to bring that up, and so we could get into that. If you're willing to, I'd really like to get into that deer and take it from the beginning when you first had him on the farm and what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the farm that I primarily hunt, and a lot of the reason that I just stick to it is because it's a family farm. It's in my backyard. And I love the management process so much that I would rather invest into, I'd rather just invest into this area and work hard at managing and making it into the best possible hunting property that I can, for our enjoyment than I would then travel, and hunt somewhere else. So I literally spend the majority of my time right here. And obviously with a family, it's way better to be able to be out of a stand and back home in 15 minutes and so on. But I just love that management aspect of hunting. That makes the end result, or harvesting a deer, way more rewarding to me. So, but a little background on the property is, I grew up shotgun hunting at a young age, and that was kind of like, we'd end our first weekend of gun season with, if there were 14 guys, there'd be 14 dead bucks, and the biggest one would be a 2-year-old 8-pointer. So management was never, at least for quality deer, was never really a thing on generation's radar. And then, because of the TV show, people didn't necessarily want to see 2-year-old 8-pointers getting shot. So that's kind of where there was a switch in mentality to me. But 240 acres is also, it's a blessing to be able to hunt that, to be able to manage that, but you also can't hold deer on it. people who have much larger tracts of land, we don't own the deer. We can't control them.
Right.
We can only do as much as we can. But I guess a true trophy buck, a true giant, and you and me were talking about this before we went live. Like, also people think of Iowa and they think, there's 170-inch deer around every corner, and that's just not the case. If you drive 30 miles east of where we're at, the deer on average, I'd say they're 15 to 20 inches bigger. Just the way the land lays, the way that people hunt, it's just a little bit more designed for deer to get a higher age structure. To get a mature deer, a mature buck around us, for a long time was very, very difficult. But through proper management and different things, our age class is starting to get older, so we're seeing better deer. We've got 4-year-olds that are still 135-inch bucks. Not everyone's they aren't giants, but G Thing, or the G2 buck, he kind of went back and forth as he grew, because his G2s changed every year, so it didn't necessarily make sense. But he was a deer that we picked up on trail camera as a 3-year-old, as a 3-year-old, when you could really recognize what he was.
Right.
Had a couple encounters, opportunities to shoot him that year, both on, literally the first day of the season, and I think the second to last day of the season, we could have shot him. And I was in TV mode at that time.
Okay.
And TV mode to me is the interesting thing about TV was it changed my perception of success so much. I used to be a guy who, I loved to hunt whether I killed something or not, but I could go on a trip and come back unsuccessful, feeling a tag, as far as feeling a tag, but feel that it was a successful hunt.
Right.
And then TV changed that so much, because you'd be gone for a week, or you'd invest so much into something, and if you came home empty-handed, even though we were a story-driven show, and that's part of hunting, you also can't make TV by doing that 13 weeks in a row, so you had to be successful as far as killing something. So literally passing the G Thing buck at 3 years old when we needed a show bad was actually probably the first, one of the first tough things that I did. But anyway, that was
how
kind
big
of a big
was he
shift
that year?
He was a 135-inch 10-pointer.
Okay.
By no means a giant, but just a nice, respectable, quote unquote TV buck. It would have made a great episode.
We always say he's a good TV deer. He's a good frame. He looked great on TV.
Yeah, exactly. But we passed him, knowing that next year, he could definitely turn into something good. And then so as a 4-year-old, we went through all our management stuff throughout the spring and planting food plots and doing everything we could to enhance the property. And then he started popping up as a 4-year-old, and he absolutely blew up between 3 and 4, and he was a great deer. And at that time, 4-year-olds, like I said, were few and far between. So he was definitely, there was actually another deer that was really good that year as well. But he was still kind of, we didn't find his sheds for some reason the year before. And then, but kind of had an idea of where he was living. He started showing up on trail cameras. Like I said, he exploded. He was a great deer, mature deer, number 1 on our hit list, and never saw him at all. The whole entire year, never saw him, but he was on pictures. I think it was 2 days before season, he disappeared. It was just like clockwork, and I was thinking I was going to kill him right away. He disappeared, and I don't think Zach was filming for me that year. But the season went on. I think it was mid-November, and we had to do some filming for a project, and I wanted to go to a part of the farm that was, the least likely to mess up any hunting. like the only little chunk of timber that I was like, there's no deer here for
Yep.
sure, you know? And so we went there and we ended up kicking him out with a doe. And, it just kind of was an interesting piece of the puzzle. Ended up putting a trail camera there and started to get pictures of him all the way through the rut. Like he was literally bringing does there to breed them. And he spent the whole entire rut there and never had an encounter with him, an opportunity to shoot him. And then the next year we actually built a house, literally right by that chunk of woods. And I put a food plot below the house thinking that, hey, this is going to be a great spot to watch deer. It's going to be a great spot to take the kids out, when I get done with work 10 minutes before we should be out hunting. But also in the back of my head thinking that this might be a spot to kill this buck. And then, summer went on. And then we started to get pictures of him just like clockwork, same exact thing. Then between 4 and 5, he absolutely blew up. Like then he was a legitimate, he was a giant deer at that point. And, literally every single night he was on trail cameras, same thing as the year before. And then as season approached, 2-3 days before, trail cameras just went dark and nothing of him. And knew it was probably going to come down to trying to catch him in the rut. And typically I don't hunt on the weekends just because I try to reserve that for family time. And we actually had my in-laws in town. And we got some picture windows that look out over a CRP field and down to the food plot. And my father-in-law was sitting, it was a Saturday morning, he was sitting down there drinking coffee and with the binoculars. And, I think I got up and I asked him if he'd seen anything good. And he said no, put the binoculars down to go and get a refill of the coffee. And my wife came down and she's like, there's a giant deer. And they knew his name and knew who he was.
Yep.
And my wife doesn't hunt very much, but she's around it and listens to it enough. And,
right.
And she knew who he was. And he was actually with the doe, dogging this doe into that food plot. And I probably moped around the house enough that day to where she let me go out and sit that night. And my father-in-law, like he's from West Central Minnesota, it's not good deer hunting, never seen a buck of that caliber before. So we snuck into a blind that night, me and my father-in-law and Zach. And we snuck into the blind, and my only thought was he was locked down with that doe, and hopefully, at some point she would bring him back out into that field. And, we sat there. It was late afternoon, and all the windows were shut in the blind, and I could hear crashing in the woods, and I just instinctively, just thought it's him. I whipped open the window, and Zach hit record on the camera, and he came tearing out like he had lost his doe. And it was just kind of a frantic sequence of events.
Right.
And he gave me a shot, and I ended up making a horrible shot on him. Like I thought I clean missed him. Long story short, we did a film on it. It's in the Full Draw Film Tour. So you can. I've probably made a relatively simple story a lot more longer than it needs to be already, but. It was just a cool hunt, tons of history with the deer. Just the feeling to be able to watch it buck like that for that long, and then have it all just play out the way that it did and eventually harvest it is just, I guess to me, that's kind of what hunting's all about, or at least, that's what I want. Ideal in a perfect world, that's what I'd love hunting to be about, be harvesting deer that you have a history with and that you worked so hard to, try to develop a plan to hunting them and killing them and harvesting them and then have it come together. It was just a pretty awesome feeling. And yeah, that was the year that Zach was there. So if there's good footage in the film, it's because of Zach.
Good deal. Yeah. So Zach's got enough play on this podcast. So he's got a shout out.
That's a shout out. There you go.
So what did that deer end up scoring?
Man, I think he was like 176. Honestly, it was. It is weird though. I sitting here at in the office and looking up, and he's right above the desk, and there's, it's kind of surrounded by deer. There's deer everywhere in the office, and it is really interesting that he's an awesome deer, maybe the biggest deer I'll ever shoot in my life, but the importance of that score, just how little in the end that
Right.
really meant to me.
Yeah,
I've got 8 pointers on the wall that are just as important to me. But I think it was like 176 and some odd change or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just an incredible deer.
Yeah.
Incredible deer.
And it's funny you bring that up too, because everybody gets, or a lot of people get drawn into the inches game. And I, just like me asking you there how big he was, that's what we've come to, is like, that's the best way to describe it. And I agree with you. Like it's not all about the inches. It's, I'm looking at a buck right now I have a pedestal mount of, and I shot him here in Michigan. He's a 115-inch 7-point, and he meant so much to me because he was, I filmed him all summer in the beans when he was, in velvet and all that stuff, and went out there and hung a stand specifically for him, and got a chance to take him on opening night, and that was with my bow, and that was, that's so cool. And he's not a giant by any means, but he's just, the story and everything going into it is one I'll never forget. And, and it's sad to say that our social media and stuff like that has really took, the score of deer, it's almost like you're not accepted if you don't, harvest big things or kill big animals, and I really don't like that. And, because that's bonus, it's the journey to me. That's the real prize, and the deer camps and the, like you said, your father-in-law was with you, and to share that with him and be able to do all that stuff, and with your kids, and that's what's fun and what means the most to me.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you, man.
So, well, here wrapping it up here soon. What do you got going for this next year? I mean, what stages are you in right now? Are you putting in food plots? I know you guys are really rainy over there in Iowa right now. What's your plan of attack this summer?
Yeah, so our spring food plots are in, our corn and our beans. We do a lot of we have to fence off all those food plots in order to even give them a chance to get through and be a food source when we actually want to hunt. So we'll start doing that here in about a week or two. We've got a big content trip coming up here. We're kind of busy production wise for the next couple of weeks, but we'll be getting those fences in, and then trail cameras out, and then as we get into later in the summer, get our fall food plots. We're going to be playing around with some different scrape trees. Last year we put in water holes, just trying to do different things to just to kind of experiment and put ourselves in a better position to be successful. So a lot of that type of stuff. This fall is going to be busy with kids. Kids are going to be hunting a little bit more, stuff like that. But then obviously we'll hit whitetail stuff super hard here. Hoping to get out west. Looks like I'm going to do a New Mexico archery elk tag or elk hunt, which I'm super pumped about. Maybe get out after some DIY stuff for mule deer and antelope. And then we've got a couple elk films we're going to be doing, rifle for clients, potential to go back to Canada and do a whitetail hunt in the bitter cold from a tree stand. So that's going to be an interesting challenge in and of itself. Just, you think about sheep hunts and all these extreme type things, but man, 20 below zero sitting in a tree stand for 12 hours a day is going to be pretty miserable in its own way.
Yeah.
But from a film standpoint, if that comes together, we've got some pretty cool ideas for it. And then, man, I feel like there's some other exciting stuff coming up, but just kind of, the fall comes, the fall comes and it's fast and furious and it's loaded with work. And, so it should definitely be an exciting time, whether it's personal stuff or, work with clients. We've got a lot of fun trips and some cool stories to tell. So we're definitely definitely excited about it.
Very cool. That hunt in Canada from a tree stand in the cold, honestly, that is like my biggest bucket list hunt for a whitetail.
Yeah?
I don't know what it is. I want to do that so bad. And my cousin, his uncle, for 12 years, and he's still doing it. He goes up there every year. He does it with a gun. But, I mean, he brings home these big, heavy, chocolate rack deer. And for some reason, it's so cool. And, that's the one I want to do. So I might have to have you back on to talk about that trip after you're done with it. I really want to know how that goes with you and what it's all about. Because maybe I might be singing a different tune once you're thinking, well, my left hand's frostbit and my nose, I can't feel that anymore, so.
Yeah. No, it's cool. When we were talking early before we jumped on, it's like deer, whitetail hunting is not the same across the board. And you get up there, and I shot a nice buck up there with a rifle this past year. And you get up there and there's deer that can come out of the woodwork late season that have literally never seen a human before.
Right.
It's different. And although it's, then there's things that you can take from it and apply back to make yourself more successful, back home. And it is a totally different experience and a very cool hunt. But we were in blinds then, and it was cold enough. So I heard we kind of have this idea for the stand location, and it involves the cameraman being able to be in a box blind filming, and then the hunter who at this point, that's me sitting in a tree stand. So I don't know how fair that is, but it could be a pretty cool trip. So
that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and doing this. I want to respect your time as well and let you have the rest of your evening tonight. But thank you for coming on and doing this. And
thank you.
We'll do another one for sure. For anybody out there that wants to look at your stuff or, follow you guys, where would be the best way to see your content and follow everything on a day-to-day?
Yeah, honestly, the best thing would be just look me up on Instagram, joe.sir, and that's kind of at least the top end of the funnel, where if we have anything that comes out, films, things like that in the future, that would be the first place that you'll hear about it.
Awesome, man. Well, again, thank you very much, Joe, for doing this, and hopefully you have a great fall ahead of you and a great summer, and good luck to you.
Hey, thank you, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to chat for a while. I'll have to do it again for sure.
Yeah, no problem. And there it is. I mean, another great conversation. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. Joe is a guy that, like I said in the podcast, I've looked up to for a long time. I mean, if you guys haven't seen any of the stuff that he's done, please, I encourage you to go check out anything he's done, Instagram or I think he might even have some stuff on YouTube. I'm not for sure with that. I'll have to check that, but go and check anything out on his Instagram, and check out Rizen Media. Like I said, he had a TV show, a very successful hunting television show, for a while, and they just did really good work. And I appreciate Joe coming on and doing this, and I say it every week with a lot of these guys, but I'm for sure gonna have him on as well. I'm looking to do this series coming up here this fall, and getting past guests that I've had on for a short kind of episode every week. That's what I'm trying to work out right now, and kind of like a rut report in a way, but just kind of like an update rut report, just kind of all over the U.S. and see what the deer hunting's like there, and be real time with it. So if I record one tonight, it's going to be up tonight, so you guys can hear that and kind of see if that's in your area, what's going on. So that's one thing I really want to get Joe back on for too as well. And like I said, it's a series I'm starting to just hash out here and get it going for this fall. But I hope everybody had a great weekend, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week, back to work and back to reality. And don't forget, next week we'll have an all-new episode. Thanks, guys.